this moment, there is 1.5 weeks left until I get to leave for the awesome Cyberpunk experience called Greylight. Right now, I've got this, and I've got this mask, and somehow I have to turn that into a coherent android costume. So, let's get crafting. Then it was time to get started on making me less obviously human, for which I wanted to cover my head and hair with a hood. The pattern of this was very much just made up on the spot, and pinned on a sturdy piece of fabric from my stash until it looked about right. I wanted it to end up big and wide, and overlap at the front to cover a bit of my neck. Once it looked about right, the back seam could be pinned, sewn, and the first test fit done. It was okay, but I didn't like the shape at the back with how sturdy the fabric was. So it was made smaller until the shape looked right. To make it hold its shape even more, the outer seams were finished by folding them over twice and stitching them flat. These also marked a milestone. It's not every day you finish a 1 kilometer spool of thread. I did pretty much the same for the middle seam, folding the edges open. This was also done for plans I had later on. Adding some velcro on the front as a closure finishes the basic hood. I figured an android with a body cam wouldn't be that weird, and it might make filming easier. So time for a totally not just trying something body cam pouch. I roughly cut some fabric to size, cut out a hole for the lens, and pinned the fabric tightly around the camera to create a pouch-like shape. Then the camera could be taken out and it was stitched into shape by hand. It ended up fitting tightly, but at least it meant the GoPro wouldn't fall out easily. I have by now received a package with these super cool work gloves. I saw them and figured they are absolutely perfect for an android. Thing is, however, my hands are tiny. And these were unisex, so the smallest size is slightly too big, but you know, an android having hands that are slightly bigger than what you would expect is not that weird either, I think. My only issue with these is they're too brightly red for my taste. However, these are a sturdy nitrile meant to repel fluids and all that sort of stuff, so how do you paint them, especially considering its hands and everything has to be super flexible? Well, someone came up with the great suggestion of using permanent marker. It's still not perfect, and on the really shiny parts it rubs off quite quickly, but here it seems to hold pretty well. So I'm going to color the entire red parts with permanent marker. I mean, even if it rubs off, it will be less bright red than they are at the moment, so I would be happy with that. Now for an exciting but scary part of this build, the mask. I only have one, so I can't screw it up too badly. Then again, it is a scrapyard android, so mistakes are part of the character. Anyway, I did some brainstorming and sketched the ideas onto the mask with a pencil. After which the mask was attacked with a Dremel. Aside from the decorative line, I drilled holes in the mask to both be more audible and to be able to stick a straw in there to drink. Even androids have to stay lubricated. Then the mask was attacked even more with a knife for the smaller scratches and dents, after which the lower half was coated in quite a few coats of silver paint. With a few more coats of silver, the mask is already looking a lot better, but we're still very far from done. Yet it is time to add another mandatory element of playing an android in this game. Androids can be hacked, and hackers do that by putting a magnet on the android mask. So the android masks need something on it that is magnetic. Then I found this in the drawers of stuff that I inherited from my grandma. I have no idea what it is. The Dutch label said salpethaak. If anyone knows, please let me know. But at this moment, it suits our needs. A magnet can attach to it, but the thing is not magnetic in itself. That's very important. And I figured with the way that it is shaped, it fits into the corner of the eye really nicely. So I think I'm going to place this here. Which means that only one thing remains, and that is that this needs to be easily recognizable, so it needs to be red. But how do you paint metal? The answer is, I'm not going to. I found this, which is nice and bright red. I glued it to the inside. We can wrap it around a few times, click it in place on the side of the eye, and done. This way the red also won't be damaged when magnets are attached to it, so extra bonus. With all of this done, I had a really nice realization. All the basic elements are here. I can now put this on and go play an android at Greylight, which mentally in a way is kind of a relief, because I was getting stressed about this costume. But we still have a week left, and it does kind of need to be cyberpunked up a bit, and I am far from done with all of my ideas. So that means, now the fun part starts. Remember me saying I had bought some fiber optics? I found a use for them, as hair. First, my idea was to use them as a mohawk. Push the fiber optics through the hood in rows of 3 and have them stand up that way. But that would take way too long and result in too many tangled fibers, so I decided to do it differently. For that, I made a buttonhole on top of the hood and then pulled all the fibers through as a sort of ponytail. And this definitely looks cool, but we aren't there yet. I actually have a second one. So I made another buttonhole below it. Keeping the plastic on also made it easier to insert than the first one. For the battery packs, I attached them by making tight elastic loops, deciding a comfortable placement, and sewed them to the hood. Yes, this might have been easier without all the fiber optics, but I couldn't be bothered to take them out. With the screw caps, it is really easy to put it all together, or replace the batteries if needed. To keep the fiber optics in place, I sewed fabric tape around it to keep it all bundled and guiding the fiber optics to the buttonholes. Then we could get to styling. As I was thinking about having the 2 fiber optic beams light up in different colors, it would be nice to mix them at the back. So this idea was mock-upped with more fabric tape. And yup, I am digging this. To make the final attachment less obvious than the tape, I used sturdy wire and stitched it on with a few stitches. Then the somewhat scary part of trimming the fiber optics. Having them be the full length looked cool, but it was just not practical. I also figured out if you cut them at an angle, there is more surface for the light to hit, so the light points are better visible. And with that, the hood is done too. This was the moment I stitched the GoPro pouch to the jacket. First, I determined the placement with some pins, then hand sewed it to the jacket. Seeing it like this? Yup, I think that will work to show you some LARP footage, although you might feel a bit small. Then back to the mask. It came with a tie which works, but wasn't really comfy. Oh, and yes, I dyed my hair purple, which ended up staining everything, but oh well, free weathering I suppose. I first got a strip of elastic to go around my head and attached it with some hot glue, just above the original tie, so it runs above my ears instead of against them. Then I added a second strip to run over my head for extra stability. Sometimes I go far not to have to hand sew every single thing, but hey, this worked. Somehow it keeps getting to this. I made a list of stuff I still want to do and it's quite a list. There's 2 days left, so full on con crunching it is. First on that list, making sure the hood wouldn't slip down. The plastic of the mask was soft enough to poke holes with an awl, through which we could attach yet another snap button. Then I realized a phone app would be part of the game and I didn't have any pockets yet. The jacket was the most suitable location for one, and after cutting I realized it might look fun to make use of the fact that the back of the fabric is black. This also helps with the idea of consisting of scrapyard pieces. With that fixed, it is time to start on one of the really fun parts, weathering. More scratches were made on the face, thinking about where it would be realistic to have damage. The silver paint I used always works really well with a black wash, so I thinned some paint and slathered it on there. Then I wiped it away so it shows all of the dents and ridges. With the remaining wash, I just made a mess on the mask. To finish it off, I played around with some copper and mixed it with black for a bit of a rusted look, which I also added to the edges of the eyes. I thought it looked nice and made them stand out a bit more. I also couldn't help myself but add a tarry line of rust. Sad Android in disrepair is sad. Then I pinned where my knee started so I could add some dirt spots in the right places. This was also done with watered down black acrylic. It might look like a lot now, but as it is very watered down, most of it is just dark because it is wet. It will become less obvious when it dries. The buckle was also looking too nice, so I attacked it with a snap blade. And while working with this fabric, I realized it would distress very well. So I grabbed a piece of sandpaper and let loose. Back to the hood. As the fiber optics were still very curly, I tried straightening them out with a heat gun, which sort of worked, but went wrong very quickly. At first I thought I screwed up, but then I realized this actually adds to the scrappy look. So I'm going to leave it like this. The bends actually reflect the light better too. Lastly, I made some scratches on the fiber optics to make them light up halfway as well. I tested this beforehand, and it didn't have a lot of impact on how well the endpoints light up. To make the jacket look even more bulky, I decided to add in shoulder pads of 1 cm thick EVA foam. Turns out I still had 2 nearly perfect shapes for it in my scrap bag. So they were altered a tiny bit and heated to be formed into shape. To make sure they don't just slide out, I glued some velcro on the phone and stitched the other side into the jacket. That worked pretty well. But they were still a bit visible from the front, so one corner was cut a tad bit shorter. By now the gloves were fully colored, but they still looked too new and pretty. Luckily the silicone could easily be cut into with a knife, but they were still very clean and there is not a lot that will stick to silicone. But then I realized the permanent markers are on alcohol bases. I'm a leather worker, I have alcohol dye. So I liberally applied a dark brown to all of the cuts and scratches that I had just made. And what is a scrappy android without some wires sticking out? So I scavenged some scrap wires from my partner's miniature train table and added them on random places on the costume. And with that, I think I can say we're done. And maybe it's a good thing to do nothing for the rest of the evening, because we still have a busy weekend of LARPing ahead. Although, I do still need to pack my bag and maybe do a makeup test and charge the cameras, and why am I like this? But oh man, that ended up as one absolutely amazing LARP. And I'm also really happy with the costume. It looked the part and maybe even better. It was actually really comfy. Drinking was a bit of a hassle though. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more LARP and costume crafting videos, you might want to subscribe. And if you like this costume, you might want to check out the video about the LARP itself for more cyberpunk awesomeness.